Good day, viewers. Welcome to a new edition of 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television with me, Manir Dan Ali. Our guest today is a trained veterinary doctor who has spent many decades practicing his trade and who retired more than a decade ago as the Veterinarian of the Nigerian Federation. I'm talking about none other than Dr. Junaidu Maina. Dr. Maina, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Manir Dan Ali.
I saw that you are recently raising a concern regarding the newly created, which is barely 1 year now. In August, it will be 1 year, the Ministry of Livestock Development. As somebody who has trained in that sector, worked in that sector, and who is still interested in that sector, what's your assessment of that ministry 1 year since it began its operation?
Well, thank you. I wasn't raising a concern per se. I was only making a short observation, relating to visit hours and the rest of them. But based on the ministry, I think it's now about 1 year old. The minister is doing well. What is unfortunate there is that we don't seem to understand the ministry at its current structure. It does not have an implementing arm. Okay, so really what the minister is doing is building the policies, and as you know, agriculture and livestock are all in the concurrent list. So invariably, if it's going to implement any program, it's going to be the states implementing, because the federal government does not really directly implement programs except in special occasions. In the past, when we had the old Ministry of Agriculture, the livestock department had an implementing arm, which was used to be called the National Livestock Development Project, based in Kaduna. It executed a World Bank project. But over time, that structure was lost. And now with the creation of this new ministry, you don't really have that implementing arm.
But why did it disappear? Why did that department disappear? Because it wasn't doing well?
No, it was doing well. You see, it implemented a World Bank project, which was the second livestock development project. Now, subsequently, we prepared a third livestock development project, but it was during the time of Abacha. So the bank was not willing to come in. Now, after that, they later, some 3 or 4 years ago, prepared a program which is called Livestock Resilience and Productivity Project, LPRES, which is a well-known project. Now, unfortunately, it had a separate name. Instead of saying Livestock 1, Livestock 2, and Livestock 3, like it happened in Fadama.
Right.
We created, and then the modalities, the implementation structure is entirely different. So the livestock department technique, the ministry, I'm not sure if it has full control of that project as obtained before.
But why in the first place do we have to rely on the World Bank for this kind of projects if they are useful to us?
Well, you see, that is the tradition in agriculture, generally. If you remember the ADP, Agricultural Development Project, it's bank. But it's not entirely relating them back, because if you use a World Bank loan to implement a project, it comes in very handy, because there's always what they call counterpart funding. So it's not only the World Bank. Now, the problem had always been in sustainability after the project. So we in the livestock suffered because after the second, we were supposed to go to the third. But then there was a break. And now this project that was prepared didn't take a lot of the successful component in the past. And like I say, it's something to do with certain lapses in the old Ministry of Agriculture. Let me quickly tell you. There used to be a special planning unit. It used to be called FACU. Later it became Project Coordinating Unit. A special project where they get staff from outside the regular civil service, from university and They were the ones who have learned lessons in preparing World Bank projects, in monitoring and evaluation of World Bank projects. Now the crop people have their Fadama 1, Fadama 2, so it's a continuation. Whereas we with livestock, it was interrupted.
But what will you say are the gains of the livestock 1 and 2? Because from the livestock sector, what you tend to hear is that we still rely on imported milk. We are not importing meat, but then it could be better than what it is, and all of that. So what were the gains?
Well, the gains from the project are many. For example, if you look at how successful the poultry sector is, that can also be attributed to parts of the World Bank loans also that came in. What happened was we were trying to develop pastoralism transhumance to settle in grazing reserves. And we chose 20 grazing reserves, put in infrastructure, and by the end of the project, there were pastoralists settled in 12 of these grazing reserves. Unfortunately, with the issue of climate change, insecurity, the pastoralists started moving out of that.
So the government stopped doing whatever it may have been doing to provide security and water and maybe pasture.
Even more than that, because the management of the grazing reserve also became a challenge. It's common property, the tragedy of the commons. So what happened to the grazing reserve? But another component of that was encouraging pastoralists to settle outside the grazing reserves, because we realized that 114 of these reserves, there's not enough land for all them to settle there. So we also encourage them to settle outside grazing reserves. And we really put in infrastructures. If you recall, before 2012, 2013, there used to be what they call peri-urban farms. If you drove from Abuja up to Zaria, you see them on the left hand. And all of them got destroyed because of the maybe industrial scale cattle rustling that took place. Now
but it wasn't like a light switch, you just click it on. It started, it wasn't checked, and it grew into a big
the cattle rustling. But what I'm trying to say is that the intervention we had in the grazing reserve, the encouragement of pastoralists to settle outside grazing reserve, encouraging new people, retirees, to also get into livestock. That's how the successes came up. Okay, right. And they were getting quality animals for Napri. But suddenly in 2012, 2013, there was this massive cattle rustling, and it destroyed all those. So you had a system trying to tell the transhumans that we can really settle and prosper. And then the example you have set became a problem. In the grazing reserve, because of insecurity, they also have to move to safer areas. Okay? Now, to make matters worse, there are some that have even moved as far as in the south. They are settling in communities. And now suddenly you have all this agitation and
farmer clashes, and then everything wrong is attributed to that.
To pastoralists, And it became a problem because if you look at around Oyo State, Isheyin area, if you look around Enugu and Ebonyi, there are large number of pastoralists that have settled as what they call agro-pastoralists. Okay? And what most people didn't know is that some of the animals they own, they manage rather, belong to the community. Okay? And for example, in certain areas like in the east, when they give them what they call gariki, they usually choose a part of land that is not suitable for crop farming. But because you keep livestock over a period, the fertility exactly, and then the movement. So there was this organic relationship. And their children were going to school, their wives are engaging in trading, and they have blended into the community, managing their livestock well, because when they're cropping, they know where to keep them. And then suddenly all this talk out anti-grazing reserve and campaign against pastoralists. And it's really destroyed a lot of our gains. So the point I'm making is we have created models of how pastoralists can settle. And this is what I think we should continue to pursue.
I want us to dwell a little on what you said is one of the success of the livestock sector, the poultry industry. But I want us to reserve that for after this short break. Viewers, It is 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, and our guest today is Dr. Junaidu Maina, a retired veterinary doctor. Welcome back. It is still 30 Minutes, the interactive program of Trust Television, and our guest today is Dr. Junaidu Maina, a veterinary doctor with decades of experience. When we're about to go on the break, I wanted to say, I actually said that it's good if we can dwell on the poultry sector, which you yourself said is one of the success stories of the Nigerian livestock sector. Why do you say so?
Yeah, it's all part of institutional memory. Manir, if you know, traditionally, poultry has always been a rural thing. And they were carrying poultry from the north to the south until when people like Obasanjo established a farm, poultry farm. We must give him credit for that. He wasn't the first poultry farmer in the south, but he, given his personality, as retired president, he went into poultry farming.
That was when he retired as military head of state.
Exactly. So what he did was they were importing hatchable eggs. You hatch those eggs, and then you have what they call day-old chicks. So he was producing those day-old chicks for people who want to go into poultry farming to procure and process. Now, if you remember in Kaduna, in Mando Road, there is what they call a PPU, Project Production Unit. So they will buy the day-old chicks, raise them to the point of 12 or 13 weeks. Since you are a poultry farmer, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Because that is when it is easy to manage. You take those point of lay and you start feeding them, and they will give you eggs every day. So that is how it all started. And so many other people got involved in this.
The broiler section
and then
of it.
Now they did a backwards integration. From when they were importing the hatchable eggs, they started producing the hatchable eggs in the country. They went from olive that they even went to parents and grandparents' stock. But the point I'm making is that they brought about commercial poultry production. Now, what I want you to notice, they didn't go to collect a local chicken and put it in a battery cage and feed it.
They got the ones that were treated for that
Those poultry birds are they are product of research. They're either broilers. If you feed them, they'll continue to gain weight. And if they are layers, you continue to give you egg every day, which our ordinary poultry would not do that. Now, that commercial breed is what we have today all over the country.
And that is why we don't have problem with chicken meat. We are not importing, or we are maybe smuggling.
Today, Nigeria is number one in egg production in Africa. I think about number 4 in broiler. And we also must give credit to Usman Nantata, who established the
Anadaria farm in the 80s.
Yeah, and today you find that Kano and around Oyo and Restadon are the centers of what?
Plus Plateau State as well.
Yeah, Plateau State is because of the history of the Veterinary Institute and the rest of them. But Kano, what turned out in Kano, because when we had avian influenza, Kano was the major center. They had, if you are given a plot, before you build it, most of the time they'll start, you Kano people are very enterprising.
Yes.
So they go into commercial. So commercial poultry. So what I was trying to say is we can apply the same principle to cattle.
Which are, in any case, bigger animals.
Exactly.
And maybe they tend to consume more. Isn't that a drawback?
Yes, but not only that. You see, you can shipload eggs on a plane for long. But for cattle, you have to have maybe an internal source of that production. So the argument is, let's have, with all this talk about ranches, do you know that all from the time we've been talking about ranches up to today, you don't have one medium or large-scale established ranch in this country? There's none.
Up to now.
Up till now. You see, one of the problems about it is that the word ranch is usually it's not well defined in this country. Ranch is a large expanse of land that is fenced, okay? And animals roam around in that, finding their food and water.
Just like we see in Australia, exactly, New Zealand, and many
just like transhumans, but they are in an enclosed area.
Right.
And in fact, you use the word harvest. Annually, you harvest. So the point we are making is that let's have a well-established cow-calf production ranch. And then annually, you can harvest those, they call them yearlings or winners. And then people who want to go, like even how you went into poultry, can now also go into proper smallholder fattening, they can go into feedlot, they can go into dairy. But we have to have that source equivalent to day-old chicks, which currently does not exist. And but you cannot ship them on a regular basis. You can only take one or two.
No, but I see people occasionally, they even airlift cows from South Africa, jerseys, pregnant ones, they come, they are in a local farm, but in many cases you hear very tragic events. That is maybe a lot of the cows could die.
This is what I'm trying to explain. You see, there is what they call cow-calf production ranch. That's a ranch. You also have dairy farms. Like in Europe, people go to Europe and they see, you go to Netherlands and you call a dairy farmer a rancher. He will tell you he's not a rancher. He's a dairy farmer. The dairy farms are usually in one location.
And intensive.
Intensive. You have a small pasture, but the animals are not feeding on that. If you look around, you see big silos.
Full of hay and other fodder.
Exactly, put of feed. Okay? Now, a dairy cow is actually almost a biological factory. You give grains and water from one end and you take milk from the other. Now, these animals have to be well managed. So if you airlift them to this country, and then like some states have done, you hand them over to a small producer without necessary means to maintain them. I mean, you are just calling for a disaster. The animal will die.
Because he will treat them as he treats the local
Good. So,
cows.
But, like I tried to explain to you how the commercial poultry is different from our local chicken.
Yes.
So is the dairy cow. The jersey you mentioned is a product of over 200 years of research. Unlike, our animal, our local cow, if it's pregnant, it's not giving milk. It's only after it has dropped the calf that you start getting milk. And for it to conceive, you have to stop milking it. Just like, what happens with human beings. Some of us in the 70s, you find there's always three years between us.
Yes.
And it's because now, generally, cows, if they're milking, they will not get pregnant. So you have to wean the calf before it gives. That's our local cow. The jersey you have mentioned,
and other
will be will be pregnant, will be given milk, and it does not need the calf before it can milk. Locally, the calf have to suckle before you have the let down.
Yes.
But the JZ and this improved breeds, the moment they go into the milking parlor, you have let down. No, what I'm trying to say is you have an animal that is pregnant, that is giving milk.
So it's kind of engineered to do so.
Exactly. So the feeding, you have to feed it so that it maintains itself, it maintains the fetus, the fetus, and also give milk with all the necessary. So it requires special feeding. You don't feed it feed it on the grass, I expect that. This is where the trouble comes.
But why is it that I see as if the Kenyans have succeeded? You see smallholder farmers, they just have 2 or 3 of such cows and they are keeping them well and they are maintaining them and in turn they are giving them enough income.
Exactly. Those is like the small-scale poultry producers. What you are talking about is what they call stall-fed animals. You keep 2 or 3 milking cows, and then you give them the proper feed like I've mentioned. they produce in Kenya, they produce the necessary milk. You belong to a cooperative, and you have all veterinary health care. And from the money you make from the milk, you can buy these special feeds. And there are special rations for those type, like in poultry, which does not exist here. So this is why I say if we really have this cow-calf rights producing these quality animals, then issue of feeds will come in, issue of cooperative, issue of veterinary health care. It's a whole value chain.
What about the disconnect between our research institutes and the industry? Because you have NAPRI in Zaria, the Nigerian Agricultural Production and Research Institute. You have the Veterinary Research Institute, VOM, and I believe you may have even others. Why are we not, I mean, in terms of vaccines, we are still importing. In terms of even the, what you said, producing the calves, the NAPRI isn't measuring up.
Yes, so it's when we say we in the livestock sector have suffered, this is exactly what we're talking about. MVRI that you're talking about was established in 1924. It's over 100 years. And I've had the privilege of interacting internationally. There is hardly any major conference you go to about veterinary. You'll not meet somebody who has worked on NAPRI among the experts. It's an excellent center, but it has limitations. The limitation was NAPRI was involved, it was supposed to be part of research, it's supposed to be part of vaccine production, it's part of capacity building, and so forth. But now, the minister, to give him a credit, is trying to separate the vaccine production from the research and diagnostic. Now, if you separate that, then it becomes a commercial thing. You can have a public-private partnership, and then you can upscale the production of vaccines, like you said. Because really the situation is such that the production is limited, and so I know this as a fact is working on that. So what we need is commercialization of some of these institutions. The same thing applies to NAPRI. But more importantly, if you look, crops, virtually every crop has a research center. But for us, we only have two. There ought to be a whole center for dairy, a center for beef production, a center for goats, a center for poultry. This is what...
And imagine that we have this Sokoto red that produces or that gives one of the best leathers in the world. Yes. But it doesn't have a ruminant program research.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. So, but like I said, this is, I know as a fact also the minister is looking into it. So these are some of the things that he is actually doing. But unfortunately, it has not reached that stage that we can see. And it takes a long time. I mean, just trying to give I'm not giving an excuse, but it's just the nature of the work in the ministry. It takes time, and there are a lot of things that need to be put in place.
Why is it that up to the 70s and the 80s, hides and skin used to be one of the items of export by Nigeria, and it appears to have kind of disappeared? Why is it the case? Because I thought that, like now with a Ministry of Livestock, with the focus on it, big money can be made if maybe the processes are right.
Well, it has not disappeared. It's still a very lucrative business, especially the goat one you're talking about. Kano is the center of it. There's a lot of, there's what they call it Moroccan leather. But what you don't see is those drying sheds that you see, you know, remember El and Brazil, and those are what we don't have. But really, the major also challenge is that those special breeds, the Sokoto red that I'm talking about, has been adulterated. So really, we need to go back a little bit, pure, try to breed it and sort of get a pure breed, because that's where you get the quality skin. And also the issue of the abattoirs and the issue of how the flaying, and there's a lot of technology that goes into it. But even now, there's still a lot of export on that.
A lot of export of the hides and skin.
Hides and skin, yes. But it's the private sector led.
Okay, I was wondering whether we've all eaten it up as pomo, because now we have developed a taste for all sorts of animal skins.
They were not walking barefooted. No, there's a lot of trade in it, but we can really formalize it properly. There's a lot of areas that the government can intervene. But it's been private sector led, and it's doing relatively well. We can do something much better than that, but it hasn't disappeared.
You keep emphasizing the private sector. I know even the minister runs his own dairy and poultry farm. Is that the way you think it could go and lead us to the same success as in the poultry sector when you're talking about, say, dairy, about beef production, and also the transition from the transhumans to more of settled production?
Exactly. This is what I'm trying to say. That, but those new entrants, like the minister, they need, like if you want to start a dairy farm in Europe, for example, you go and order for 10 or 20 what they call in-calf heifers. Pregnant animal. Okay? But today, you can get poultry, but you can't get the center for cattle. So we have to create that source. That is when people can say, I want 2, 3 pregnant animals. I will take them to my place, build a shed for them, they will calve, and I'll start milking. Or I want small ruminants of that quantity. You get me? So that source, equivalent to their old chicks, is what is missing. The minister, I'm sure if you go to his farm, he bought animals from different locations. And that is not the way to start. You really have to start with the same age, the same breed, like you do in poultry. That's how you can make progress. Because then you know the biology, you know how to do the feeding, you know how to take care of the health. But otherwise, you go to my Gatari farm, you buy a heifer, or next time you go to Latamafara, you don't even know the source. But if we go back to what I'm preaching, we have a real ranch. Now you can order for 10 pregnant animals. The interesting thing is, what usually happens, you buy them in what they call the last trimester. You see, cattle get pregnant like human beings. 9 months.
So when they are close to delivering.
Yes. So 9 months, 7 months, you take them to that location. So they'll spend about 2-3 months in that location. The important thing is that they'll get used to the challenges, the health pathogen challenges there, and they produce that antibody in their milk. So when they drop the calf, he will have antibodies, he will have certain things from the colostrum, from the milk, that will protect them against that environment. So that's why it has to be 9 months before. 7 months. It has to be a special time to bring them into a location.
Very interesting point you are making there, but I'm afraid we have run out of time. I wish we had more time to keep discussing the matter. Thank you very much for coming on to the program.
Thank you, Dan Ali, for this opportunity.
Viewers, that's the end of this edition of 30 Minutes. Keep a date with us.